You will see in their words, God is sadistic, he is this, he isn't that. God delusion, or even before that, the things Richard Dawkins wrote. These are demonstrative of why people want us not to believe in God, because if you do so, then you become a moral good person. You live a life of responsibility, of accountability. They don't want that. They want to be free. Okay, the laws are self-emergent, emergent properties. Think about it. At one point, there was nothing, no laws. And then suddenly, it emerged. From what? By what? Because laws are very precise in their operation, like the highway code in our motorways, right? These laws, like if you open up the highway code of English highway code, yeah? Transport, UK Transport Highway Code. It tells you, if you dangerously drive and kill someone, you'll get life imprisonment or 12 years, you get penalty of this much, and number of points in your license. It's there clearly, in red, in the highway code. If you exceed over 70 miles per hour in a 70 miles per hour zone, the penalty, and so on and so forth. Yeah. Now these things, you can't simply imagine that these are emergent things that will happen by itself without intelligent agencies putting those laws in there, because the laws...
I get your point, I see where you're going. But...
Right, so if you examine each one of these things in the scientific paradigm, these things, by saying self-emergent, from nothingness, by magic, always there, it doesn't give an explanatory power which are reasonable. The only thing that makes sense through this exploration is there needs to be an intelligent agency that puts those laws there, because laws demonstrate intelligence behind it. That's where science is struggling to accept, because now if you do accept that, there is an intelligent agency. But science doesn't want to accept an intelligent agency for our universe. So where do you go now?
So I see your point, but it's by matter. I mean, science doesn't work as a matter of exclusion. So it's not one reason, and so your next best reason is the right one. So
what are the reasons available now? If you observe this phenomena and we want to know the best possible explanation, so we explore and examine critically, and we see only thing that remains an option is there's an intelligent agency. But that's what science is struggling to accept, because intelligent agency means there is this self-aware entity that is intelligent, decides, wills, all of these things, which people say God. But science don't want to accept God. That's where the dilemma is. If you are in front of science, then you are in this dilemma. What do I do in this case? Do I simply say, I am going to be agnostic and say, I don't know, there may be the other reasons? Where and how much do you suspend your judgment when the evidence is obvious? When you see all the evidence of a crime scene pointing towards a criminal, fingerprints, DNA matching, video footage, and then you still say...
What I'm saying is that you don't have the DNA matching. You have the DNA of someone else not matching. It's like having two people. You test the DNA doesn't match that person. I say, okay, so that's the other person.
But ours is different.
Well, it could be other person.
But the scenario about the universe with the laws operational, one thing is physical laws, other thing is laws of logic. Both exist, okay? Both exist. Without the laws of logic, we won't be able to do science and make inferences. The way we're making critical assessment is because we're using logic, saying if X, then this, yeah? A and not minus A's cannot be true at the same time. The principle of non-contradiction. Science operates based on those laws. To explain that these things just requires an explanation which we don't know yet is actually not committing to what's really available as an evidence in front of you. Because how would you look at all the available evidence pointing towards intelligence, and you say no, we don't know yet. But you know there's an intelligence behind it, because only intelligence can explain this.
Well, it's not intelligence, it's just the way nature works. So nature always tries...
Take your bike, right? I have a bike too. Mine is foldable. This bike, so we observe it and we say, okay, it just existence like magic. You discard it like a scientifically absurd explanation. What would you come at the end looking at this bike? The way it is engineered, forget the word engineering, put it in inverted quotes. The way it is put together looks like even this gearing mechanism enough to say there seems to be precision, outcome in mind. That when you do 1, it has this gear so you can climb up. When you go into 6 or 12, you can run faster because the way it's moved. These are outcome-based engineering system or design out there. So if you then say, look, this bike, after all this investigation, like how could it come as it is as a bike, there is no intelligence, then you'd be saying, why are you coming up with this explanation that there's no intelligence? Because all the evidence point towards it. Imagine I said, no, there's no intelligence. Okay, let me be the opponent. This bike was not made by anyone or anybody or any robots or any company.
That's not my point. My point is it was made by someone intelligent because he wants to find a way to move around more efficiently.
But how do you arrive at that conclusion? It was made by someone. Have you seen its maker? I haven't. I haven't seen its maker, so no one made it. That's my proposition to you. How are you going to now argue with me? It looks designed. That's what we called teleonomy. It's an apparent illusion of design. You think it's designed, but actually it's not designed. It's just assembled together over millions of years in a desert. Plastics, silica, sand came together, humidity, temperature, wind, and then it formed this. Now, this is my hypothesis.
Well, but you know, in the case of a bike, you know that there's someone making it. In the case of nature, you know nature's history. You know how it started, you know how it evolved. You know that organisms try to find the most efficient way of evolving, moving, eating, living, and reproducing. And that's my point. The reason why you say there's someone intelligent creating nature and creating the laws of nature, you can devolve and get to the basic laws of nature, and then you cannot explain those. So there must be someone intelligent. My point is, nature, as it was made at that atomic level, always finds the most efficient ways of solving things, whether it's consuming now oxygen. Before it was different gases, but what you describe as intelligent is just nature finding ways of solving stuff.
So that's where the problem, I think, in my perspective. When we look at nature, when we studied biology and biochemistry, we look at the cells, we go in downstream DNA and look at the signaling pathways, okay? So you have the sonic hedgehog pathway, the Ras-Merck pathway. If you're into biology and biochemistry, when you look at all the signal pathways downstream the DNA, how each are interconnected with signals of feedback mechanism, prohibitions, this is what, stop there, this affects this one. Just look at, say, cell cycle DNA repair mechanisms, for example. When you have something happening in the DNA and then the DNA is being damaged, within there's a mechanism to repair the DNA damage. Now, these things, if you just look at a chart, mind-boggling. So much, it starts looking at all this. Look at these trees. Just look at that tree. Can you see all these branches, all of that?
Yeah.
So many intricate mechanisms like this. It's as complex like this in different cell signal pathways. So many signal pathways, cytochrome C, you name it, even the coagulation and so on, not DNA downstream, upstairs. All of this are hugely interconnected, complex harmony and harmonious design.
Yeah.
Nature is blind. That's number one. Nature is not intelligent. Nature doesn't have...
Why do you say that, though?
Because nature is not an entity. Nature is not... Okay. Is nature possessing of intelligence?
Yeah.
Nature possesses intelligence.
Not intelligence, but it's basic instincts that make you...
No, nature. Look.
Nature is not an entity.
Not you.
When nature, I mean...
Take the whole universe.
The tree
The
must
tree...
find ways of surviving in the winter.
The tree is a product. Product that is engineered and designed in a certain way. We're saying nature, which this tree is part of, that nature is not intelligent being or a person or a thing. That's why that thing is blind. It doesn't have goal orientation. That, okay, I'm going to make the cells to understand that you need to survive if you're going to be fit. And you need to do all of... There is no planning. There is no intelligence. So when we look at this bike or the cell cycles, all of this demonstrates precision engineering. This bike is not made by anyone. You would argue with me all day until the cow comes home and saying, you don't have to need to see the maker, the manufacturer, whoever is made it. But because there are signs of design mechanism within it that will make you infer there is a designer for this. That's how you will argue with me. The reason why this is made by someone, because it has design features. Design features. This design cannot come by itself. There has to be a designer, and that's how I argue. This universe, I don't see the designer, but I see the design. I see the design feature. So I have to make the same kind of inference. There is a designer of our universe. That's where the difference between someone who's a believer and doing science, like me, and someone who's an unbeliever and doing science. Because they can see the evidence, but they deny the evidence which is in front of them. We don't want to deny the obvious. Why am I going to deny there's a maker of this even though I haven't seen it? I can infer it.
So you're saying that that tree is a different shape from this tree because someone else decided
No.
it was meant to be that way?
These trees demonstrate design features. When water from the ground goes up the roots to all the way to the branches, defies gravity. So how does it do that? Defying gravity, because water shouldn't go up. There's a mechanism called capillary suction. This mechanism didn't just come by itself, because you can't just think, get your water on the floor and let it come to your hand. It's not going to come to your hand unless you have all this mechanism of capillary suction in a pipe with a glass and so on and so forth. The tree has all of that. How do you explain the occurrence, existence?
Evolution.
Evolution is what? It's not intelligent.
Evolution is
That's where the brainwashing happens in science. Evolution is a process, describing a process where simpler things evolve or develop into more and more complex things. But that's what the problem is. Without intelligent agency behind it, you cannot have these things developing. Have you seen a mousetrap ever? The mousetrap only works when it's complete. Individual parts of a mousetrap by itself is not going to trap a mouse. But in our system, all in our body, there are systems like this, as irreducibly complex like that, where it only works when it's all together. Evolution, the whole mechanism is, it gradually, slowly puts things, and then you'll get eventually a system. But how do you build a system when it's not complete? Because it doesn't know the outcome. Evolution doesn't have an outcome goal because it's not outcome oriented. It's a blind process. So that's where the problem is. When you see, for example, the bacterial flagella, how the motor rotates around. Precision engineering. The downstream, the cellular pathway I talked about, precision engineering. Evolution cannot explain this. And that's why I'm saying people need to really step aside and say, look, have I been fooled by the scientific dogma? Because when Europe was once suppressing science, Europe meaning Catholicism. Catholicism meant papism, Pope. Suppressed science because they had a geocentric model, and Copernicus and others, Galileo, they came up with a different theory. Science was suppressing, no, you heretics, this is not what God described in the Bible. So scientific community were really against religion at that point. So eventually they tried to find alternative and mechanism in which they would say, look, we are independent of your thinking about the real world. We will have our own paradigm or way of thinking through investigation, through making inferences and conclusion. So they found a mechanism in which they say, you don't need God for all of this natural world explanation. All you need is a mechanism called natural selection. Of course, things have evolved a bit more, but that's how they started it. So that's why science has become dogmatic against religion because of the history they had. But Islam and science has always been twin sisters. Islam developed science, and through that scientific methodology, Europe saw Renaissance. It's only because of Europe came into Islamic Spain, they had the Renaissance in Europe, because Islam developed the methodology of science. And so long before you had all this people developing, Islam had all this trigonometry, geometry, mathematics, optics, physics, you name it. They're naming stars. Why? Because Islam never considered science as an antagonistic to religion. In fact, the Quran says the opposite. Go and travel. قُلْ سِيرُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ فَيَنْظُرُوا كَيْفَ بَدَأَ اللَّهُ الْخَلْقَ. Something like this, right? Go and travel in the earth and see how God originated the creation. Or go and travel in the earth and see what this happened. So the Quran constantly demands us to explore the universe, to understand that there is a creator, and this creator created us for a purpose, for a reason.
That I'm fine with. I mean, I said not practical, so I'm not going to advocate for.
But do you see how we can reconcile against this dogmatism, and we can still be scientists, you and I, and say even a scientist or science practitioners.
You miss the scientific matter in the last step. So you
Which
say,
is what?
Which is, I see the tree. I know it evolves in a certain way because it has to survive. We get to basic laws of nature. I cannot explain those through science if I go too back in time. So there's this other solution that I
Other solutions, intelligent agency.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
That's not a unsolved mystery. It's a solution. There is intelligence behind it.
How do you prove that?
Inference. How do you prove gravity? It's so well known, right? Gravity. How do I prove gravity? Can we see gravity? Can we taste it?
We can.
What color is gravity?
Not everything that exists has a color.
Good.
What color is wind?
Does gravity have anything that I can touch, feel, sense, in terms of hear it, smell
You
it?
can feel the wind. The wind is caused by gravity.
No.
You didn't. Caused by gravity with pressure.
You didn't see gravity, feel gravity.
You felt the wind.
You felt the wind.
Yeah.
Okay. The wind is not gravity. So if I want to now understand gravity, how can I prove gravity?
Take your phone.
I measure its effect, but I don't measure gravity.
You can feel the gravity through the way. You just let yourself fall.
No. You're measuring the effects of gravity. If something falls because you put it there, Earth is quite big compared to your phone. I put your phone and it drops because the Earth pulls it down, right? Because of the mass of the Earth compared to the mass of your phone. Now, what you saw wasn't gravity. You saw the effect of gravity. So all you're doing is proving by this inference of looking at the effects. That's an established way of making inference.
Yeah.
That's exactly what we're doing. We are looking at the world, how it's operating with its natural laws set up by the intelligent agency, and we're looking at the effect. So all of this effect shows there's an intelligence behind it. I don't see the God or the creator, but I see the effects of actions of this creator, of this intelligent agency, putting all these laws in operation. Same kind of inference. Why would one you accept and the other you reject?
I mean, I know how gravity is created. I know what causes it.
No, you make an inference. You look at it and you observe it and saying...
Gravity is caused by the movement of the Earth and the other planets. So that's what causes gravity. I don't see anything that causes God.
What you know is, because there are two objects, there's a force between them. Okay? Bigger object, heavier object rather, pulls the other objects together. That law is there. You just observed it and you're saying that's gravitational law, right? And you actually can quantify it. You
can actually replicate it.
Yeah, you can quantify it.
And I can replicate it. That's the other point.
That's what you see. I look at the bigger picture. This is a demonstration of the law by a lawgiver. This thing that you see, gravitational law, this constant, 9.8 meters per second, whatever you want to call it, right?
Yeah.
I can't remember. This precision is done by a lawmaker to put those laws. It's not something different.
Why?
So if there wasn't a lawmaker, there cannot be this law. If no human beings compiled the highway code, how to drive in a motorway, highway code would not exist and pop into existence by itself.
But I mean, that's a law of physics.
This physics are there because of someone we call
what I'm saying
creator,
is, how do you prove that?
All of these laws and operationing of those laws is because of a lawgiver, intelligent agency. Without a lawgiver, you cannot explain these laws.
Why can I replicate gravity in a scientific environment then? Why can I replicate gravity? You're saying that gravity is caused by two big objects moving in the same way, and that's why if I drop my phone, it falls to the ground.
Why would this be not ad hoc? Why does sometimes not a phone fall but stays floating? Why doesn't it do that?
Because there's always gravity. Because the Earth is
so the gravity is fixed.
Yeah.
So
it's a
what fixed it? This precision. Remember, we're talking about precision engineering. Who or what have those precision engineering in place? I am saying out of all these possibilities, only thing that makes sense with a scientific exploration is this intelligent agency behind it. A designer, a lawgiver, a lawmaker, a coder, creator, originator, God. It's not a jump. It's not a religious jump. It's an inference by looking at. So inference of the best observation. Science is inference of the best observation. This is inference of the best observation. If you have an alternative, you can bring it on and we can examine it. Say alternative.
What do you think about Big Bang then?
Big Bang is an effect. What's the cause? Big Bang is just an effect. Something which was there in singularity, and then there was a huge, bang or explosion, then inflation, and then all these separations through all this expansion. This is an effect. How do you explain this thing, which is singularity, suddenly expanding? What caused it? Laws. But what laws? Who put the laws in the first place? All goes back to, again, this is a precision engineering. It doesn't simply just happen. It's not a brute fact. Because if everything was a brute fact, your bike was made by nothing. It's a brute fact.
Well, I mean, in the end, it's about going back to the Big Bang, but I mean, people are arguing about
Big Bang, if you think about it, something happened. You need to have to explain the origin of laws that govern the bang to occur. Same question. Where did that law come from? Without that law, the Big Bang would not bang. Yeah? Your bicycle is not exploding. Why is it not exploding? Because there isn't a law which is making it explode.
I mean, I see where you're going, but your last step is not based on scientific method.
My last step, inference to the best observation, best explanation to the observation. If you have an alternative, you can bring it forward. That's how we do science.
It doesn't bring you to, it brings you to something that, in your opinion, is highly likely. It's not something that is 100%.
Science is like this, tentative, best explanation. Today, our hypothesis about something can change tomorrow. It's always changing with paradigm shifts. If you read Thomas Kuhn's, okay, you will realize that's how science now, Newtonian mechanics suddenly had a huge paradigm shift to quantum mechanics, theory of relativity, and so on and so forth. This happens always in science, but we're looking at always the best explanation for our observation. But what I am offering is, looking at all the thing in this universe, there is clear evidence of intelligence behind it. If that is not the best explanation, what are the other alternatives? That's what we want scientists to bring on the table, because their alternatives is, I don't know yet, maybe in the future. That's not an explanation. That is not an explanation. That is simply not accepting the best explanation so far. So when the evolutionists look at the model of evolution and say, that is the best explanation so far, that's how they're working. This, to us, is the best working model to explain this. But we say, even with this, without intelligent agency behind it, your evolution collapses. Whole theory, whole model collapses. Because without agency behind it, nothing can move, nothing can transform, nothing can change. Yeah? But they don't want to accept intelligent agency. Because accepting intelligent agency puts them outside the domain of dogmatic science and bring them into theology or creationism, or there's a creator. And that's what they cannot accept by the very design of what science is all about. Science is not accepting God, but accepting explanation by making the best explanation. This is why it's become dogmatic. And you as a scientist, we as practitioners of science, we really need to come out of this dogmatism. So that's known as Scientism. Not Scientism, Scientism. You can look at this up. What is Scientism and this dogma that's operating in this universe so that people don't believe in a creator, believe in God? Because what that would mean, responsibility, accountability. Look at the Epstein files. Look at the Epstein files, things that are redacted. Professor Lawrence Krauss, Richard Dawkins, they're all within them. They're all in there. What were they doing?
I mean...
No, what were they doing? Because they don't have the moral ground in which they can be controlled, because you as a Protestant or a Catholic...
But that comes down to the individuals.
Yeah, but I'm saying these are the people who are propagating and...
It's a few of the people.
I'm not generalizing, because that would be a huge mistake on my part to generalize. I'm saying those propagandists of science, Richard Dawkins, for his whole life, he's been propagating evolution in school, in scientific curriculum and so on and so forth. He is the mouthpiece for people to believe in evolution and so on. Professor Lawrence Krauss, same thing, like his book, The Universe from Nothing. These are proponents of Scientism, but look at their moral bankruptcy in Epstein files.
It doesn't affect the
No, what we're saying is the reason why they are engulfed and immersed and happy with that, because if they took the other alternatives of the Creator, who asked you to be moral, to live morally in this life, not to be pedophiles and child molesters, for them, they don't want to be controlled in a religious, institutionalized way of living. Because that means they can't do what they want to do. Go and molest children. Yeah? So that's why I'm saying the reason why Scientism is still working is because of their willing detachment from being a moral person. That's the arrogance people have. I don't want to be controlled by this, let's say, sadistic individual that created everything. You will see in their words, God is sadistic, He is this, He isn't that. God delusion, or even before that, the things Richard Dawkins wrote. These are demonstrative of why people want us not to believe in God, because if you do so, then you become a moral good person. You live a life of responsibility, of accountability. They don't want that. They want to be free. That's called this liberty, the idea of living, being a liberal person.
That's a different subject. You can believe in the other kind of science we're talking about and still have morals, still be religious.
Correct. But I'm just giving you the proponents who are trying to put science as this field. So we have to really differentiate between Scientism and real science. Real science is not blindly saying, that's it, there's no God, but being open to all of this evidence suggests to intelligence agency. So why should I not be open to that? Science with this particular paradigm or methodology, maybe it's limited in scope. Then we have to look into alternative. What other avenues in which we can determine about the reality? Who or what is behind the reality? If all the evidence demonstrates an intelligent agency and science is limited to accept that, we need to go beyond science and go into rationality. Because science operates under this pre-axioms or axiomatic assumptions that the universe is rational. And they didn't work this out through an experiment that the universe is rational, because this is already metaphysics. So metaphysics, not physics, metaphysics is already built-in assumption to do science. So why can we not go into that and say, rationally speaking, there is evidence enough for a creator, designer?
I don't think there's enough evidence on it.
Okay. Let me give you one example, just to wrap this up. This is an argument called contingency argument of contingence. If you haven't heard about it, you can go and read about it. Everything that you see in this universe, our cosmos and our visual universe, it's limited and dependent, and it could be something in a different way. Your bike could have been not a bicycle, but a unicycle. It is not necessary that it has two wheels.
It's more efficient.
It's not necessary.
But it's more efficient, yeah.
Good, but it's not necessary. Yeah? It could have been 3 wheels or 2 wheels or whatever. It could have been red rather than gray, for example. So these things are what we call, it could have been otherwise. Everything that you see in this universe could have been otherwise. It's not necessary, it is.
It is, though. That's my point.
No, it's not.
It is.
My cup and your cup could have been
But these
different.
are arbitrary decisions.
No, not arbitrary.
Nature.
No. Everything in nature could have been otherwise. Could have been otherwise. It's not necessary that it's like this. Because it could have been otherwise, if you think about the whole thing, why is it like this then? The only explanation that will make sense is it's been chosen to be. It's been willed to be, because it could have been otherwise. So the whole thing that is dependent and contingent must depend on something that is necessary. Because things that are dependent on each other cannot explain its existence. They have to depend on the existence on something that has to be necessary. So our universe is not necessary. It's contingent, it's dependent. So it must depend on something that is necessary. Necessary means it has no beginning, because it will be independent. So that's why using arguments like this, you arrive at a conclusion that there is a necessary thing that has no beginning, always exists, and is self-aware, has a will, has knowledge, has ability and power. Because without these, at least 4 minimum components, nothing can be transformed in our universe. So you've already arrived at an intelligent creator.
I mean, that's where we don't agree on.
That's the inference that you make by rational thinking, because there has to be. If you and I exist as something, there cannot be a time in the past where there was absolutely nothing, because absolute nothingness doesn't have potentiality, doesn't have energy, doesn't have will, doesn't have awareness. It's just simply absence of everything. Imagine at one point there was absolutely nothing. Nothing will come out of it.
Why not?
Okay, tell me how something will come out of nothing.
It's a science of evolution. It was not nothing. It was just something very small.
No, I'm talking about nothing as absence of everything. That's what nothing is. Not
Then you
nothing.
get to the Big Bang, which is the previous.
No, Big Bang is not nothing, it's something.
Yeah,
So
before Big Bang.
But what I'm saying, if we imagine a time in the past where there was simply absolutely nothing, if we were to imagine that this thing existed, then something will never come out of it. Because there is no even potentiality for something to arise. There are 9 levels of nothingness. 9 levels. If you read and look at the German philosopher who talks about these 9 levels of nothingness. For example, if I give you a present and you open up and say, there's no present in there, that's level 1 nothing. You open up a box of a present, and there's not, you discover no present, you say there's nothing. But actually there's not nothing. There's air, there's gravity, there's quantum fields.
I see
right?
where you're going.
That's level 1. Level 9 nothingness is absolute nothing. If you and I are something today, there cannot be a time where there's absolutely nothing. What it means is, if something exists today, which is a fact, and we agree, then something always has to exist.
Yeah, but
Always exist.
fair. But that's something that
Then
science is still investigating.
Then the question is, how does this something that always exists transform other things into as it now today? If it's not self-aware, possesses ability and a will and power, it cannot transform. Imagine now you want to go from one place to the other, right? You've got the bike. So you want to go, right? This is something that you want to do. A transformation of you from one place to another place. If you are fully sedated, in deep sleep, would you be able to go from one place to the other? You won't be able to, because you're not aware of yourself.
It's a lot of assumptions that you're making.
No. I'm making inferences by giving you rational understanding. If you and I were dead, we won't be able to ride this bike, take from here, and go over there. Because we are dead, we're not self-aware. So a dead human being won't be able to transform themselves from one place to the other. Because to transform, at least you need self-awareness. To get on the bike, hop on the bike, cycle and go. That self-awareness is an essential criteria. Number 2, suppose you and I am self-sufficient. You're on the bike, right? But you have no will. You don't intend to go from there. You intend everything else, having a discussion with me, and then leaving your bike and walking there to take a tube. If you don't intend, you'd never take this bike from one place to the other, because intentional will is necessary, prerequisite for that transformation of that bike. Now suppose you are self-aware and you are intending it, but you are incapacitated, like I really tie you up and your bike, pin on the ground. You are incapacitated, you won't be able to go there because you need the ability. You have the will, but you can't move because you're tied on the ground. Now suppose you're not tied, you have the will, you have the ability, but you don't know how to ride a bike, or you don't know where to go. So I must say, go to Primrose Palace. You haven't got a clue what Primrose Palace is. You don't even know. What, is it a banana? Is it a chocolate? Is it a location? If you don't know the know-how, you won't be able to go. So what I've demonstrated is by rational thinking, self-awareness, will, ability, knowledge are prerequisite for any transformation. You going from this place to that place. Something that always existed to transform anything, like this universe or multiverse, it requires these 4 essential characteristics.
But you're talking about organisms now.
We're
talking about
I'm talking
nature.
about the reality, real things.
Yeah, but being conscious and taking decision is different from what happens in nature by nature's laws.
Nature's
Physics.
law only can come from a lawmaker that is self-aware, that made that law.
That's the first point we're
That's the inference. That's the best inference you can get. you have to give me an explanation as an alternative. Because I am saying all of these laws that is given in the nature, these laws cannot pop into existence by themselves. It needs a lawmaker. And that's something that existed always, is self-aware. That is that lawmaker which is aware of itself, is intelligent, is knowledgeable, has a will. So I've already given you a framework of understanding what we call as a creator, intelligent agency.
We always go back to the same point.
Yeah, but again, if you go back to nature, ask yourself, natural laws. So it goes back to my point. Natural laws cannot exist by themselves. They cannot self-emerge. They cannot make themselves. It needs to come from a lawmaker. The lawmaker is what we accepted, something that always existed, is to be that lawmaker. And that lawmaker can only make these laws if it's self-aware of it, if it's aware of itself.
I don't think there's a way out of this. I mean, I'm saying...
Think about it. I don't ask you to accept it straight away, but I'm just giving you some way to think critically, because you already are born in a religious family, right? But you've been detached because not practicing.
I'm not
religious, because you've been detached from religiosity because you thought science has already given us a modus operandi how to live our life with an alternative explanation. But I'm saying that is what is really the smoke screen of certain things trying to drive us away from the reality. The reality is there's a creator, created us for a purpose, which is to be grateful to him and to live a life so that we can then go to a place of paradise or heaven, of eternal bliss and joy and tranquility. That's made ready for those who people have right belief in our creator, that there's only one and only, and to be subservient and to be totally submissive to this creator. And if we do that and we accept our way of life according to the will of this creator, then we'll have this eternal happiness. But if we don't, then what awaits us is going to be in a day of judgment where everyone will be standing in front and will be asked, why did you reject the truth when it comes to us? We need to have an explanation. There will be no...
One question before that. How did you infer the way your God wants you to live then?
We can't infer. Because remember...
How do you know then?
Good question. The only way we can know is when the communication comes from the creator. Because you can say, oh, the purpose of my living is to eat bananas. Is to have a smoke of a cigar. People make up these laws, that's what they do. But all of these are speculative to the most. The only foolproof way that you can be sure and certain is when your creator tells us why he created us. And that's exactly what we say. The creator has communicated to us throughout human history, through prophets and messengers that he raised, and gave evidence to them so that people can believe and accept this creator and be submittant to this creator. The last of all of them was Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, who received the Quran through this angel Gabriel, engine of revelation. And then this communication, this Quran tells us who God is, why he created us, what we have to do, how do we have to live our life to be saved from this wrath and punishment awaiting those who are arrogant and who are someone who deny the evidence which is obvious and disbelieve in the creator. So all of them is clearly in front of us. Our role is to open up, look at the message of the Quran, read the biography of the Prophet, look at his life and investigate and accept by assessing critically that is he really a messenger of God, a communication that he received from God or not? Is the Quran really a communication from God or not? Once you verify it, then you know that...
How do you verify?
By looking at the evidence it provides. So the Quran provides positive evidence that it's from God, as well as, interestingly for you and me, falsification test to falsify it that it's not from God. Because that's what we want as scientists or people who are practitioners of science. We want to know how we can falsify something if they can bring... Because that will be easier of saying, now I know it's false or it's true. So the Quran offers various falsification tests. I'll give you two, just for the sake of brevity. The Quran says if this book wasn't from God, then people will be able to imitate its chapters. Either a single chapter or 10 chapters or the whole book, 114 chapters, right? What is so unique about the Quran that when the Quran came in a composition, it wasn't prose or poetry like the Arabs knew at that time, 1445 years ago, but it's in a linguistic genre of its own. So the composition is such that if you were to match it, like if I say, look, I am going, or if I said I are going, you'll say, what do you mean by I are going? You're not speaking English. Because that would be a grammatical mistake. There's a convention of language, how we speak. Yeah? The Quran formulated in a construction that if you were to imitate something like it in the construction, it becomes like something like this. It becomes not acceptable Arabic. Anything that you imagine. That's why for the last 1400 years, Muslims who wanted to be very enthusiastic, let me try, or non-Muslims, they all failed and acknowledged that you cannot imitate it. The Quran asked people, why is it that you cannot imitate? Because if it was a human construct, if it's Shakespeare, if it's Beethoven, whatever, you should be able to imitate it. Large linguistic models, LLMs, they should be able to imitate it. But even them, they failed with the criteria that's given. I have a whole video on YouTube called ChatGPT imitated in the Quran. Mansur, when he came, like it was version 3 at that point, still the same. Doesn't matter if it's 5.3 now, it's still the criteria is the same. If you put all this criteria, no linguistic model can bring up something like the Quran. Why? Because it has to create a different language altogether that is acceptable. That's the only way you can imitate it, but no one will accept your gibberish. Imagine now, আমি আপনার সঙ্গে এখন কথা বলছি যে ভাষায়, আপনি মনে করবেন আপনার সঙ্গে কথা বলছি কিন্তু আপনি কিছু বুঝতে পারবেন না. So what I said, you didn't understand anything. Yeah? So if I bring something like this and I say this is English version 2, you'd say, but I understood nothing. No one understood anything. That will be what the problem would be. Because when you bring something like the Quran, it will be something like this. It will not make sense to anyone in the language. And that's why it's not imitable. That's number one falsification test. People, it's open for them. If they can't do it, the Quran says, go and ask helpers and supporters besides God. If you can't do it yourself because you don't know Arabic, go and ask an Arabic professor from Harvard and Oxford, Cambridge, whatever. And people still fail. There's many attempts on the internet and not realizing that they don't even know what the conditions are. Okay? So I put up some videos, hopefully people will now understand what the real like it means. The second falsification test, the Quran says, if this book was not from God, then surely you will find within it many discrepancies, many contradictions, many errors, many inconsistencies. A book revealed or given in a period of 23 years, talking about astrophysics, biology, future, historical past, you're bound to get some mistakes if you're coming from a human being or a group of human beings at a particular time in 1400 years ago. Because science wasn't developed, history wasn't all unearthed. Like we now know about hieroglyphics, because hieroglyphics is unknown about how to read in the 1400 years ago. Recently, a few hundred years ago, we started looking at the Rosetta Stone, we started discovering how to understand hieroglyphics. Now, people can read and understand hieroglyphics. So things about Egyptian history, 1400 years ago, what was in the hieroglyphics, people didn't have a clue. Neither the Bible, neither the Romans, the Persians, whatever. The Quran could have easily, if it talked about ancient Egyptian history, get it wrong. That's what you expect from localized knowledge of a human being who is only circumstantial. Like what I know today and what we will know 1,000 years later will be much, much different. People will laugh at us like, oh, you did this, you thought that, because science will be more advanced. Our understanding of reality will be more, unpacked more. So when the Quran says, if this book, if it wasn't from God, you'd find many inconsistencies and discrepancies. It's not in the find that, oh, what about phone book? The phone book is not written with all these things over all this time. The Quran talks about all of these phenomena, as I mentioned about astrophysics. The Quran says, have the unbelievers not seen that the heavens, the sky and the earth, everything was joined together and then got parted asunder? See what you immediately think, the concept, what it looked like describing. There was everything compacted in one thing, like a singularity, and then there was the separation. The current, one of the models of Big Bang. I'm not saying it's Big Bang, but I'm saying this is what the Quran describes as astrophysics. And it says, and he brought every living thing from water. Now we realize the importance of water for living things. So astrophysics and biology, the Quran describes talking to, have not the unbelievers seen it? And the unbelievers or the people who didn't believe in it, now after examining it, they could say, now we know it's false. But they cannot falsify it because it's true. Exactly what the Quran says. So if you go into science, history, biology, whatever, you will find that you cannot find an inconsistency when you expect to find one. So if people fail to find, so this is another way of saying I cannot falsify the Quran because it claims it's from God and it will be free from contradictions. And I'm trying to find one, but I can't find one. So I can't falsify it. So that's the falsification way of approaching the Quran, knowing that this has to be from God. Okay? So there are many examples. I don't want to bore you. In fact, we can then say, all of these demonstrates the Quran has to be extraterrestrial, not from a human being, not from any of these demons and things people say. It's beyond their capacity. It has to be the one from the one who is all knowledgeable, the creator of the heavens and the earth. That's how we accept, by critical thinking, examining, and making this conclusion is from God. Not blind faith, but totally using our intellect to affirm what is true and rejecting what is false. But you can't reject the Quran because of the truth of its self-evidence. So read the Quran, examine it, critically analyze it. Yeah? That's what we are asking. What was your name?
Francesco.
Francesco, my name is Mansur. Pleasure speaking to you. It was a nice discussion that we had. Let us think more about this rather than being into Scientism, the dogma. Okay? Because you already had a religious upbringing, but not religious maybe. But you have that inside you, that you knowing that there has to be something, it's not just magic that people say. Yeah. So all the best. Yeah. Take care. I hope you have a nice day. Okay? Take care. Oh, these are, wow, look at that. So many cameras. I don't know each one, but if you watch on Dawahwise, there's a channel called Dawahwise.
YouTube.
There's a few others on YouTube. I'll just show you which one. This will be also found in there, and there's various others. This is D-A-W-A-H, and wise as in wisdom, wise. One word, wise again, W-I-S-E. W-I-S-E. No, H. D-A-W-A-H-W-I-S-E. That one. And you will see this logo there. That's us. As you can see people have recorded already. Yeah. So hopefully you can interact in the conversation in the comment section when people are there. And I hope people who are watching and listening, have a productive conversation with our friend here, Francesco, rather than being, insulting in any way, shape or form. All the best. Take care. See you later. Enjoy. أقول قولي هذا أستغفر الله لكم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.